The fluorescent lights of Northwood High hummed with a sterile intensity Lina Kim hadn't known back in Seoul. Here, hallways smelled of disinfectant and floor wax, a stark contrast to the comforting chaos of kimchi jjigae and street tteokbokki that scented her memories of home. Everything felt muted. The colors on the walls seemed faded, the laughter in the halls brittle compared to the boisterous warmth she missed. Just 3 weeks in, America still felt like a borrowed landscape viewed through thick glass. She traced the outline of a faded periodic table poster, the English letters still slightly swimmy, a constant reminder of her otherness. Today was career day. Or, as Mr. Harrison, her homeroom teacher, called it with forced enthusiasm, a glimpse into your glorious futures. Lina clutched the edge of her worn notebook, knuckles white. He had a way of smiling that didn't quite reach his eyes, a practiced politeness that felt colder than the autumn air outside. One by one, students stood, sharing parental professions: accountant, plumber, dentist, insurance agent. Familiar, solid American jobs. Then it was her turn. Lina's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She took a deep breath, the sterile air doing little to calm her. "My mother," she began, her voice smaller than she intended, carefully shaping the English words, "is Dr. Evelyn Park. She is a senior research scientist at KSA." She paused, adding the full name for clarity, the Korean Space Innovation Agency. Pride swelled in her chest, pushing the words out faster. She leads a team, designing new rocket propulsion systems. Actually, NASA offered her a position last year. A big one. But she chose to stay, for KSIA's lunar project. Silence. Not the respectful silence she expected, but a heavy, confused pause. Then, a ripple. A snicker from the back row, quickly stifled. A few bewildered glances exchanged between students. Lina's cheeks flushed hot, a prickling heat spreading up her neck. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat, that same non-smile fixed on his face. "Well now, Lina," he said, his tone dripping with condescending patience. "That's quite a story. KSA, you say? Are you sure about that name? And NASA?" He chuckled softly, a dry, papery sound. "That's very ambitious. Perhaps you mean she assists one of the lead scientists there. It's easy to get details mixed up when things are new." "No," Lina insisted, gripping her notebook tighter. "She leads the propulsion team. Project Nightingale. They declined the NASA offer." A louder laugh erupted, this time from Amanda, a girl with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue sitting near the front. "Yeah, right. My uncle works for a government contractor. He says those Asian agencies just copy everything from us anyway. NASA wouldn't offer her a job. The dam broke." Laughter, open and unrestrained now, filled the room. It wasn't friendly teasing, it felt sharp, pointed, tearing down something precious. Lina felt nailed to the floor, the pride she'd felt moments ago curdling into a sickening mix of humiliation and fury. Her carefully constructed English, the truth of her mother's hard-earned achievements, twisted, dismissed, turned into a joke. A lie. Mr. Harrison made a half-hearted gesture for quiet, but the damage was done. He looked at Lina with something akin to pity, shaking his head slightly as if dealing with a child prone to fantasy. "All right, settle down, class. Let's move on. Thank you for sharing, Lina." The dismissal was absolute. She sank back into her seat, trembling. Her mother, whose photo sat on the desk of Korea's science minister, whose name was spoken with reverence in university lecture halls, reduced to this. A housekeeper, someone had whispered earlier when guessing her mother's job before she spoke. The memory seared. Here, under this strange, pale sky, her mother's brilliance didn't count. Her accomplishments were unbelievable, impossible. Lies told by a foreign girl. The rest of the period passed in a blur of shame. Lina stared out the window, past the manicured school lawn to the unfamiliar trees shedding their leaves. The sky was vast and blue, just like Seoul's sky, but it felt different. Colder. Less forgiving. How could they dismiss her mother, a quiet hero back home, so easily? The sting of injustice was sharp, a brutal welcome to her new reality, a prelude to battles she didn't yet know she'd have to fight just to claim her own truth. That brutal dismissal on career day carved a line in Lina Kim's young life, before and after. The after was a landscape of averted gazes and poorly concealed whispers that followed her down the sterile Northwood High hallways like stray dogs. The strange sky she'd noticed felt heavier now, pressing down. How could truth feel so flimsy here, so easily brushed aside? Back in Seoul, her mother, Dr. Evelyn Park, was practically a national treasure, a leading light at KSIA. Here, apparently, she was just the mother of a delusional little foreigner. The injustice left a bitter taste in Lina's mouth, metallic and sharp. Lunchtime became a strategic retreat. She'd find the quietest corner of the cafeteria, or sometimes just a bench outside, unwrapping the sandwich her mother had packed. It was always made with care: turkey, lettuce, a slice of cheese on soft white bread, but it tasted like cardboard compared to the memory of warm rice, savory beef bulgogi, and crisp, tangy kakakdu radish kimchi her Halmiani used to pack in elaborate dosarak boxes. Adaptation, her mother gently reminded her, was key. But adapting her taste buds was one thing, adapting to the constant, low-grade hostility was another beast entirely. She ate quickly, head down, pretending to be absorbed in the dog-eared science textbook that had become her shield. The English language remained a hurdle, a tangled net she navigated daily. She understood most of what was said, but the speed, the slang, the jokes often flew past her, leaving her smiling awkwardly, hoping it was the right reaction. And speaking. Each sentence felt like assembling a complex machine under pressure, terrified of a misplaced word, a wrong verb tense that would mark her, yet again, as different. As other. The whispers weren't always subtle. One afternoon, heading towards her locker, Kevin and Mark, two boys from her homeroom with perpetually bored expressions, blocked her path. Kevin smirked, pulling the corners of his eyes into cruel slits. "Hey, Mars girl. Heard you're building a spaceship to go home." Mark snickered. "Yeah, maybe your mom, the rocket scientist, can give you a lift." Beep boop beep. He made robotic gestures, mimicking some cartoon alien. Lina froze, heat flooding her face. In her hands was her precious notebook, filled with intricate propulsion system schematics her mother had patiently explained, diagrams she understood better than most adults. Diagrams that felt sacred, a connection to her brilliant Iyama and her late Appa. She snapped the notebook shut, the sound echoing slightly in the near-empty hallway. "Leave me alone," she mumbled, trying to push past them. They let her pass, but their laughter followed her down the corridor, sharp and ugly. It wasn't the first time. That space monster taunts, the exaggerated bows, the questions about whether she ate dogs, they chipped away at her, tiny aggressions that left invisible wounds. But the note was different. She found it later that day, stuck to her locker door with a piece of grimy tape. Just 5 words in crude block letters: "Go back where you came from." The air hitched in her throat. This wasn't just a stupid joke. This was a rejection. A denial of her right to even be here. Her fingers trembled as she carefully peeled the note off, the cheap paper vibrating slightly. For a moment, she wanted to rip it into 1,000 pieces, scatter it like toxic confetti. But she didn't. Instead, she folded it carefully, precisely, and slipped it into the back pocket of her science notebook. Evidence. Proof of a battle she hadn't asked for but was clearly already fighting. That evening, the small apartment she shared with her mother felt like a sanctuary, yet also a place where she had to maintain a facade. Dr. Evelyn Park sat at the small kitchen table, her laptop open, bathing her face in a cool blue light. Complex orbital calculations and fluid dynamics equations filled the screen. Lina saw the familiar lines of concentration etched around her mother's eyes, the slight slump in her shoulders that spoke of long hours and intense pressure. Navigating international research collaboration, especially when subtly undermined by colleagues who perhaps shared Mr. Harrison's skepticism, wasn't easy, even for a mind like her mother's. "How was school, Natal?" Dr. Park asked, looking up with a smile that didn't quite erase the weariness. "My daughter." The Korean endearment warmed Lina, but also made the lie harder. "It was okay, Iyama," Lina replied, forcing brightness into her voice, avoiding her mother's perceptive gaze. She couldn't add her burdens to her mother's already heavy load. How could she explain the note? The taunts? The soul-crushing dismissal of everything their family stood for. Later, curled up on her bed, Lina traced the elegant lines of a multi-stage rocket engine design in her notebook. A flashback, vivid and bittersweet, surfaced, her appa, smelling faintly of machine oil and coffee, sitting beside her on the floor of their Seoul apartment years ago. He'd had that same passion in his eyes as her mother, a fire for engineering, for reaching beyond the possible. He'd given her the small, rocket-shaped USB drive she now kept tucked away safely. "Our dreams are in here, Lina," he'd whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "The calculations, the ideas, unfinished. But one day, when you are ready, they will be yours to fly." He'd been gone 6 months later, a sudden illness stealing him away far too soon. At the funeral, amidst the quiet dignity and hushed grief, Lina hadn't cried. She'd held her Yama's hand, feeling an adult weight settle on her small shoulders. Only later, when she was 10 and finally dared to plug the USB into her computer, did the tears come, seeing the elegant, complex designs for an advanced propulsion system, his beautiful mind laid bare, his soaring dreams grounded before takeoff. That legacy felt both precious and incredibly heavy now. Here, that same curiosity, that same drive inherited from both parents, was met with ridicule. Why? Why was it so hard for them to believe? Korean values warred within her. Respect your elders. Endure hardship with quiet strength, Ini. Never shame the family. Talking back to Mr. Harrison, challenging the laughter, it felt fundamentally wrong, ingrained in her upbringing. Yet, the fierce injustice of it all, the blatant prejudice disguised as reasonable doubt, sparked a rebellious fire. Was silence always strength? Or was there a time, a place, where truth demanded a voice, no matter how small or accented? She hugged her knees, burying her face. Her mother's words, spoken during a past difficulty, echoed, "The greatest challenges often precede the greatest progress, Lina." Easy to say. Harder to see how the daily barrage of mockery and dismissal could possibly lead anywhere good. How could this ache in her chest, this constant feeling of being unseen and unheard, possibly turn into progress? It just felt like drowning. Slowly. Then, a few days later, sorting through a pile of school notices her mother had left on the counter, Lina saw it. An email printout about upcoming school events. Tucked away in the middle, special science lecture, Dr. Evelyn Park, KSI, will be presenting on advancements in aerospace technology. Lina's breath caught. Her mother. Here. At Northwood High. A jolt, sharp and electric, shot through her. Hope surged, wild and terrifying. This could be it. The proof. Vindication. Everyone would see. But immediately, a cold wave of fear washed over her. What if they still didn't believe? What if Mr. Harrison found a way to undermine her mother? What if Dr. Park, her brilliant, respected Yama, became the target of their ridicule too? The thought was unbearable. This wasn't just an opportunity, it was a tightrope walk over a chasm of potential humiliation, and the weight of that possibility felt immense, settling heavily on her young shoulders. That tightrope feeling, hope versus terror, defined Lina Kim's existence in the days leading up to the science lecture. Sleep offered little escape, her dreams a confusing jumble of mocking laughter and complex rocket schematics. She'd oscillate wildly between picturing her mother, Dr. Evelyn Park, dazzling the entire school with her brilliance, silencing the doubters forever, and imagining the catastrophic opposite, Mr. Harrison finding some subtle way to discredit her, the students erupting in even worse ridicule, her mother's reputation tarnished in this foreign land because of her. The weight felt crushing. Could this 1 hour possibly fix everything? Or would it shatter the fragile piece she was barely clinging to? The morning of the lecture arrived wrapped in a tense silence between mother and daughter. Dr. Park seemed calm, meticulously checking her presentation slides on her laptop while sipping barley tea. She wore a sharply tailored navy pantsuit, the small, discreet KSIA lapel pin glinting under the kitchen light, not a spacesuit, but an armor of professionalism nonetheless. It spoke of quiet authority, years of dedication distilled into her poised demeanor. She caught Lina watching her anxiously. "Truth has its own gravity, Lina," she said softly, her voice calm. "It pulls things into alignment eventually. Just breathe." Easy for her to say. She wasn't the one navigating the social minefield of Northwood High. At school, the air buzzed with anticipation. Rumors had spread. A real scientist was coming. When Mr. Harrison made the announcement in homeroom, his voice was deliberately flat, betraying no hint of the personal connection. "Please proceed to the auditorium in an orderly fashion for our guest science presentation. Dr. Evelyn Park, a visiting researcher, will be speaking. Let's show our visitor appropriate respect." He glanced briefly, pointedly, at Lina as he said the last sentence. Lina felt the familiar heat rise in her neck. No mention of KSIA, no mention of her connection. Just visiting researcher. It felt like another subtle dismissal. As they filed into the auditorium, Amanda brushed past Lina, leaning in to whisper with mock sweetness, "Try not to fall asleep during your mom's boring science talk, okay?" Lina flinched but kept walking, finding a seat in the front row as her mother had requested, her hands clammy, her heart thudding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Principal Williams gave a brief, standard introduction, and then Dr. Evelyn Park walked onto the stage. She moved with an understated confidence that immediately commanded attention. The initial whispers and rustles in the audience quieted. She stood at the podium, adjusted the microphone, and smiled, a genuine, warm smile that seemed to encompass the entire room. "Good morning, everyone," she began. Her English was clear, precise, carrying only the faintest, melodic trace of a Korean accent. "My name is Dr. Evelyn Park. It's a pleasure to be here." She clicked to her first slide, the KSI logo, bold and clear, alongside the NASA insignia. "I am a senior engineer and head of the Advanced Propulsion Systems Division at the Korean Space Innovation Agency, KSIA. For the past few years, my team and I have been focused on Project Nightingale." Lina risked a glance towards Mr. Harrison, seated off to the side with the other teachers. His face, usually set in lines of mild disdain or forced patience, had gone disturbingly slack. The color drained from his cheeks, leaving behind a pasty pallor. His eyes, wide with disbelief, darted from the KSIA logo on the screen to Dr. Park, then, inevitably, to Lina, sitting bolt upright in the front row. Recognition dawned, followed by something that looked alarmingly like panic. Dr. Park, oblivious or perhaps choosing to ignore the drama unfolding offstage, launched into her presentation. She spoke not just of theories, but of tangible KSIA achievements. She showed stunning visuals, animations of the new satellite deploying its solar arrays, data charts illustrating the dramatic fuel efficiency of their newly patented ion thruster technology, consuming nearly 30% less propellant than current standard systems for similar orbital maneuvers. She spoke of the challenges, the breakthroughs, the meticulous testing. Crucially, she highlighted the collaborative nature of modern space exploration, mentioning joint projects with European and Japanese agencies, subtly dismantling the copycat narrative Amanda had parroted. The atmosphere in the auditorium underwent a palpable shift. Initial fidgeting ceased. Students who normally doodled or stared out windows were leaning forward, captivated. The complex science, explained with such clarity and passion, became accessible, exciting. Whispers now were not of mockery, but of awe. "Whoa, look at that. Did she say less fuel than NASA's? Then, Dr. Park paused, smiling again. Theory and data are essential, she said. But sometimes, seeing a principle in action makes all the difference. For this next part, I need some help from my special assistant. Her eyes found Lina's in the front row. Someone who, I'm proud to say, has an intuitive grasp of physics that continues to impress me. Lina Kim, would you please join me on stage? A collective intake of breath seemed to suck the air out of the room. Every single head turned towards Lina. Her legs felt like lead, but somehow, she stood up. She walked down the aisle and up the few steps onto the stage, acutely aware of hundreds of eyes tracking her every move. Her body trembled, not with fear this time, but with a strange, buzzing energy, a mixture of terror and exhilaration. She saw Amanda's face, mouth slightly agape, the usual sneer replaced with wide-eyed confusion. She saw other faces that had previously ignored or mocked her, now watching with open curiosity. Dr. Park placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder for just a moment. "Ready?" she murmured in Korean, too low for the microphone to pick up. Lina nodded, her throat tight. Together, they set up a small, elegant apparatus on the demonstration table, a polished metallic base with carefully arranged electromagnets. Dr. Park held up a small, gleaming metal sphere. This simple device demonstrates a core principle behind some of the propulsion concepts we're exploring, magnetic levitation, Dr. Park explained to the audience. Using precisely controlled magnetic fields to suspend and potentially move objects without physical contact. The beauty of physics often lies in harnessing fundamental forces in innovative ways. She nodded to Lina. With steady hands, Lina adjusted a dial on the control panel. A low hum filled the air. The small metal sphere lifted off its stand, wobbling for a second before stabilizing, floating silently, magically, an inch above the base. A collective gasp rippled through the auditorium. It was simple, yet mesmerizing. In that moment, suspended between magnetic fields, the sphere seemed to represent Lina herself, held aloft by invisible forces, finally seen. The simplest principles, Dr. Park continued, her voice filled with quiet passion, can lead to the most amazing results. It just takes curiosity, dedication, and the courage to explore. As the sphere hovered, rotating slightly, Lina felt a profound sense of rightness, of clicking into place. Standing beside her mother, sharing this moment of scientific wonder, the humiliation of the past week seemed to evaporate. The whispers, the note, Mr. Harrison's disbelief, they lost their power under the quiet hum of validated truth. This was real. Her mother was real. Their life, their work, their dreams, were real. The applause that followed the demonstration and the end of the lecture was genuine, enthusiastic. Lina felt a warm tide of pride wash over her, a feeling so potent it almost brought tears to her eyes. Validation. It tasted sweet. As she walked off the stage beside her mother, basking in the reflected glow of respect finally being shown, she chanced another look at Mr. Harrison. The shock was gone, replaced by an expression she couldn't quite decipher. It wasn't admiration. It was an apology. It looked harder. Colder. A flicker of resentment in his eyes sent an unexpected chill down her spine. Proving him wrong hadn't brought relief or understanding. It seemed, somehow, to have drawn a new, more dangerous line in the sand. The momentary triumph felt suddenly fragile, overshadowed by the unsettling feeling that this battle was far from over. That chilling premonition Lina felt hardening in Mr. Harrison's gaze after the lecture wasn't just paranoia. It manifested the very next day. He handed back her physics homework, an analysis of thermodynamics she'd actually enjoyed tackling, covered in aggressive red slashes. AC-. Lina stared at it, bewildered. She'd double-checked her calculations, even included an advanced note on entropy applications her mother had explained. "Lina," Mr. Harrison said, his voice smooth but cold as he addressed her in front of the class, holding up her paper as if it were contaminated. "While I appreciate enthusiasm, This goes far beyond the scope of our current unit on basic heat transfer. You've employed concepts and terminology we haven't covered. It suggests you aren't focusing on the assigned material." He dropped the paper onto her desk. "Please rewrite it, adhering strictly to the chapter outline. Perhaps simpler is better for you right now." Simpler? He meant dumber, didn't he? The injustice burned. He wasn't critiquing her understanding, he was punishing her for having it, for daring to validate her mother's credentials. The unfair grading became a pattern. Her meticulously researched history paper came back with points docked for unsubstantiated claims, despite clear footnotes. Her participation score plummeted, even though she raised her hand. It escalated during lab sessions. When the voltmeter at her station malfunctioned, she politely requested assistance. Mr. Harrison ambled over, peered at the device, and sighed dramatically. "Really, Lina? Trouble with basic equipment?" I assumed someone with such advanced theoretical knowledge, the sarcasm was thick enough to taste, would find this child's play. "Perhaps you should observe your classmates." He walked away, leaving her stranded with the faulty meter while others proceeded. He was isolating her, using his authority as a weapon, chipping away at her confidence under the guise of pedagogy. A silent war raged within Lina. Every fiber of her being screamed against the unfairness. She wanted to yell, to throw the textbook, to demand he explain the blatant bias. But the ingrained Korean values, the lessons from her Halmiani about respecting teachers, about maintaining composure, chinchak, kept her pinned down. Yui, propriety, courtesy, demanded silence, deference. Yet, here, silence felt like complicity. It felt like letting him win. Was respecting an elder who actively wronged you still the right path? The cultural conflict was a vice tightening around her heart, squeezing the breath out of her. This American school, it had different rules. Invisible ones. And she didn't know how to play the game without betraying either herself or her heritage. The dam finally broke one rainy afternoon. After another lab session filled with Mr. Harrison's pointed neglect, Lina found herself alone in the echoing girls' restroom, the carefully constructed wall around her emotions crumbling. Sobs racked her small frame, hot tears of frustration, anger, and profound loneliness splashing onto the tiled floor. It wasn't just sadness, it was the raw, grating feeling of being powerless against targeted injustice. She cried herself out, eventually returning home with red-rimmed eyes and a heavy heart. She tried to slip past her mother, but Dr. Park took one look at her face and gently steered her towards the kitchen table. Without a word, Hirayama brewed some fragrant baricha, roasted barley tea, its nutty aroma a small comfort. "He hates me, Iyama," Lina finally choked out, the words tumbling over each other. "Ever since the lecture, he finds ways. Wrong grades, ignoring me in lab. He makes me feel stupid. Just because we, proved him wrong." Dr. Park listened patiently, her expression soft with understanding. She pushed the warm mug towards Lina. "Ah, Lina-ya," she sighed softly. "Some people, they build their houses on foundations of pride. When the earth shakes beneath them, when their core beliefs are challenged, they don't question the foundation. They just get angry at the earthquake." She paused, letting the metaphor settle. "My own father, your Harabiaji, faced much hardship after the war. He always said, the stream does not break the stone by force, my daughter. It flows around it. Gently, persistently, it finds its path and wears the stone smooth over time." Lina sipped the tea, the warmth spreading through her but not quite reaching the icy knot in her chest. "Flow around him. But Iyama, he's trying to block the stream. He wants me to fail." "Perhaps," Dr. Park conceded, her gaze thoughtful. "Perhaps you need to show him the strength of the water, not just its patience. Sometimes, flowing around means finding a different channel altogether. A way to demonstrate your own current, Lina. Not just mine. A different channel." The words sparked something. The school science fair. The flyer had been posted near the library, garish neon green and yellow. Lina had barely glanced at it, assuming it wasn't for her. More judgment. More opportunities for ridicule. But now, a different thought emerged. This wouldn't be about her mother. This would be about her. About the knowledge pulsing in her own veins. About her Appa. The science fair, Lina whispered, the idea taking shape. Dr. Park raised an eyebrow, a flicker of interest in her eyes. Oh. I could build something, Lina said, her voice gaining strength. Something he can't dismiss. Something based on Appa's designs. She thought of the rocket-shaped USB, hidden away like a secret heart. His electromagnetic propulsion system. A rare, unguarded smile touched Dr. Park's lips. Your father's dream, she murmured. That would be a powerful current indeed. And just like that, a new purpose ignited within Lina, burning away the helplessness. This wasn't just a school project. It was a mission. A tribute. A declaration. The following weeks transformed their small apartment. The living room corner became Lina's workshop, strewn with wires, magnets, circuit boards, and pages upon pages of calculations. Evenings were no longer just about homework and quiet dinners, they became intense collaboration sessions. Dr. Park, after her own demanding workday, would sit beside Lina, explaining the complex field dynamics, the nuances of Lorentz forces, guiding her daughter's hands as she carefully wound copper wire or soldered connections. But she never took over. She advised, questioned, encouraged, fostering Lina's own understanding. It was in these shared hours, amidst the scent of solder and the low hum of electronics, that Lina felt the suffocating weight of Northwood High recede. Here, science was exploration, creation, a legacy of love passed down through generations. The hostility at school, however, remained. One afternoon, needing a specific resistor from the physics lab supply closet, Lina waited outside Mr. Harrison's empty classroom. She heard his voice from the open doorway, talking to Mrs. Davison, the history teacher. Always something extra, Mr. Harrison was saying, his voice laced with weary condescension. These foreign families, they push their kids relentlessly. Always trying to prove something, exaggerating accomplishments back home. Frankly, it's becoming rather tiresome. Lina recoiled as if struck. Tiresome. Her mother's brilliance, her father's legacy, her own desperate effort to simply be seen, reduced to something tiresome. She backed away silently, slipping down the hallway, leaning against the cool cinderblock wall to catch her breath. Tears stung her eyes again, but this time they were tears of pure, unadulterated anger. Fine. She'd show him tiresome. That night, and every night after, Lina worked with a renewed, almost feverish intensity. She wasn't just building her father's design anymore, she was making it her own. Poring over his elegant but incomplete schematics on the USB drive, she noticed a potential inefficiency in the magnetic containment field. Remembering an article her mother had shown her about biomimicry, about the spirals found in seashells maximizing structural integrity, an idea sparked. What if she reconfigured the emitter coils, creating a nested, spiraling magnetic field instead of a simple torus? It was complex. It required redoing weeks of calculations. But the simulations suggested it could work. A slight increase in thrust, a noticeable decrease in energy consumption. Innovation, born from her father's dream and nurtured by her own quiet defiance. Mr. Harrison, when she submitted her project proposal form, had merely glanced at the title, Miniature Electromagnetic Propulsion Demonstrator, and offered a tight-lipped smile. Ambitious, Lina. Make sure it's grounded in reality this time. His skepticism was like gasoline on the fire of her determination. Grounded in reality. Oh, it would be real. Undeniably real. As she put the final touches on the model the night before the science fair, carefully aligning the last magnetic coil, the small metal sphere sitting patiently on its launch platform, she felt a surge of nervous energy. The workshop corner was cluttered, her fingers were sore, her eyes burned from lack of sleep, but the model, it was beautiful. Sleek, compact, humming with potential. It was her father's legacy, her mother's guidance, and her own stubborn resilience, forged under pressure. Tomorrow, the water would meet the stone. The school gymnasium buzzed with the chaotic energy of nervous ambition. It smelled faintly of popcorn, old sweat socks, and the sharp ozone tang of overloaded circuits. Cardboard trifold displays screamed in neon colors, showcasing everything from dutifully erupting baking soda volcanoes to surprisingly sophisticated robotics projects blinking with LEDs. Tucked away near the bleachers, Lina Kim's booth felt almost monastic in comparison. Just a simple table draped in black cloth, holding her sleek electromagnetic propulsion demonstrator, a stack of meticulously handwritten calculation notes, and a single, framed photograph of her smiling father holding a university engineering award. Minimalist. Focused. Lina smoothed down her simple skirt for the 10th time, her palms damp despite the cool air circulating sluggishly from the vents above. She had poured weeks, months, practically her entire being since the lecture, into this project. It felt less like a science fair entry and more like a piece of her soul laid bare on a folding table. Mr. Harrison did a cursory walkthrough of the aisles, offering tight-lipped encouragement to some students. As he passed Lina's table, he paused for only a fraction of a second, his gaze flicking over her device with undisguised skepticism. "Well, good luck, Lina," he murmured, the words devoid of warmth, before moving on. The doubt radiating from him was a familiar cold prickle, but today, Lina found it fueled rather than froze her. Let him doubt. Today wasn't about him. Not really. Her hands trembled slightly as she made a final adjustment to the power lead. Anticipation coiled low in her stomach. This was it. Judgment Day. The judges arrived in a cluster, 3 figures armed with clipboards and serious expressions. 2 were teachers from other departments Lina vaguely recognized. The third, however, made her breath catch. He was younger, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and an air of genuine curiosity that immediately set him apart. Dr. Ramirez, the visiting physicist from the local university, the one judge whose opinion felt like it truly mattered. They moved methodically down the rows, listening patiently to explanations of hydroponics and solar ovens. Lina watched their approach, her heart rate accelerating with each step they took closer. Finally, they stood before her table. Dr. Ramirez leaned in, his eyes scanning her setup with keen interest. "All right, young lady," he said, his voice friendly but professional. "This looks intriguing. Tell me what you're trying to show us here." Lina took a deep, steadying breath, remembering her mother's calm demeanor. She met his gaze directly. "This is a working model demonstrating electromagnetic propulsion," she began, her voice clearer and steadier than she'd expected. She deliberately avoided overly technical jargon, drawing on the simple analogies she practiced. Instead of chemical rockets, it uses magnetic fields, like invisible rails, to accelerate a projectile. The core idea is based on foundational work by my late father. She gestured briefly to the photo, but I've introduced a modification to the magnetic containment field. She explained her spiral configuration, inspired by seashell geometry, sketching the field lines quickly on a spare sheet of paper. She spoke of the Lorentz force, the principles of electromagnetic thrust, how this technology, if scaled, could potentially revolutionize satellite maneuvering and deep space travel by drastically reducing fuel requirements. She spoke of the challenges, power sources, field stability, but also the immense possibilities. Dr. Ramirez listened intently, nodding, his pen flying across his notepad. The other judges exchanged impressed glances. "Fascinating," Dr. Ramirez murmured when she paused. "And the spiral configuration, what led you to that specific hypothesis?" Lina explained her biomimicry inspiration, the subsequent simulations showing improved efficiency. The goal was to create a more focused, stable magnetic nozzle to direct the thrust more effectively, minimizing energy loss compared to a standard toroidal field. She pointed to specific equations in her notes, her initial nervousness melting away, replaced by the familiar comfort of scientific principles. This, she knew. This, she understood. And you ran simulations to verify this? Dr. Ramirez pressed, his eyes alight with intellectual curiosity. Yes, extensively, Lina confirmed. The data suggested a potential 8% increase in thrust efficiency for comparable energy input in this small-scale model. He peppered her with more questions, about the materials used, the power source calculations, potential interference patterns. Lina answered each one thoughtfully, confidently, demonstrating a depth of understanding that went far beyond simple memorization. This wasn't just her father's project anymore. Her own innovation, her own grasp of the complex physics, was undeniable. She noticed, peripherally, that a crowd had begun to gather. Students, initially drawn by the novelty, were now listening intently. She saw Amanda at the edge of the group, her arms crossed, but her usual mocking expression replaced by one of stunned concentration. Even Kevin and Mark were there, looking bewildered. A few other teachers had drifted over, drawn by the buzz. Then, Lina's eyes scanned the back of the growing crowd and found her. Her Yama stood quietly near the gymnasium doors, having slipped in unnoticed. Dr. Park wasn't smiling, exactly, but her eyes held a universe of pride and unwavering support. Their gazes met for a brief, potent second. "You've got this," the look said. It was all the reinforcement Lina needed. With a final nod to the judges, Lina reached for the control panel. "May I demonstrate?" "Please," Dr. Ramirez said, leaning forward slightly. Lina flipped the power switch. A low, resonant hum filled the air around the table. She adjusted the dials slowly, precisely. The small, polished metal sphere quivered, then lifted smoothly off its stand. It hovered silently, suspended in mid-air by invisible forces, rotating gently under the gymnasium lights. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Even the judges seemed momentarily captivated. It was elegant. It was quiet. It worked. "Remarkable," Dr. Ramirez breathed, making a final, decisive note on his clipboard. "Truly remarkable work, Lina." The judges moved on, conferring in low tones as they walked away, occasionally glancing back at Lina's humming device. The wait that followed was agonizing. Lina fiddled with her notes, trying to appear calm, while her insides felt like a swarm of agitated bees. The crowd around her booth lingered, some students asking hesitant questions now, their earlier skepticism replaced by curiosity. Finally, Principal Williams stepped up to the small, makeshift podium near the entrance. The gymnasium chatter slowly died down. Lina felt her mother's hand gently squeeze her shoulder. "You have already won, Natal," Dr. Park whispered in Korean. "Look how far you have come." Lina knew she was right. Whatever happened next, she had faced the doubt, presented her work, honored her father. That felt like a victory in itself. "We had an exceptional group of projects this year," Principal Williams began, his voice booming slightly through the microphone. "The judges had a very difficult decision." He shuffled some papers. But one project stood out for its scientific rigor, its innovative approach, and its clear potential. Lina held her breath. The first place award for the Northwood High Science Fair goes to Lina Kim, for her electromagnetic propulsion demonstrator. The gymnasium erupted. Applause thundered around her, a wave of sound that felt physical. Lina stared, stunned, as students around her cheered, some patting her on the back. Her face felt hot, but this time it was the flush of pure, overwhelming joy. Through the happy chaos, she saw Amanda push forward, a genuinely impressed, slightly sheepish smile on her face. "Seriously, Lina," she said, loud enough to be heard over the din, "that was awesome." "Really? Congratulations." Lina managed a shaky smile back as the principal beckoned her forward. Walking towards the podium felt surreal, like moving through water. She accepted the blue ribbon and the small, gleaming trophy, her hands trembling again. "Would you like to say a few words, Lina?" Principal Williams offered kindly. Standing at the microphone, looking out at the sea of faces, some curious, some smiling, some still processing, Lina's mind went blank. Her carefully prepared English thank you speech vanished. Instead, the words of her Harabiaji surfaced. She took a deep breath. In Korea, she began, her voice trembling slightly, her accent suddenly feeling less like a liability and more like her. "We have a saying. Goziing kyut nagi anda. It means, after hardship, happiness comes." Or maybe, she improvised, finding her footing, like a tunnel. No matter how long, there is always an end. She paused, gathering courage. "When I first came here, it felt like a very long, dark tunnel sometimes. Lots of doubts. Lots of prejudice." She risked a quick glance towards Mr. Harrison, who stood stone-faced in the crowd of teachers, not clapping. "But I believed in my work. I believed in the truth. And I believed in knowledge." She lifted the trophy slightly. "Thank you." The applause that followed was even louder, warmer, more sustained. Dr. Ramirez stepped forward briefly to announce that Lina's project would represent Northwood at the upcoming state science fair. For the first time since arriving in this new country, Lina felt truly seen. Not as the strange foreign girl, not as the liar, but as Lina Kim. Scientist. Innovator. Her father's daughter. As curious students crowded around afterward, asking excited questions about magnetic fields and future plans, a genuine laugh escaped her lips, the first one in what felt like forever. But amidst the joyful congratulations, she caught Mr. Harrison's eye one last time across the crowded gym. His expression was still unreadable, a complex mask of confusion and something else, something that hinted the path to true understanding, especially with him, might still hold unexpected turns. The immediate aftermath of the science fair wasn't a dramatic, movie-style reversal where Lina Kim was suddenly crowned queen of the school. Change, she realized, often arrived more quietly, like the gradual creep of dawn after a long night. Yet, something had undeniably shifted in the atmosphere of Northwood High. That complex, unreadable expression on Mr. Harrison's face seemed mirrored, in softer forms, across the student body. The outright hostility vanished, replaced by something far more complex and, frankly, more interesting: curiosity. Students who had previously offered only scorn or indifference now approached her hesitantly. "Hey, Lina," a boy from her English class mumbled, shifting his weight awkwardly. "That levitating thing. How did you even build that?" Another girl asked if the calculations displayed on her board were real. Lina, surprised at first, found herself patiently explaining magnetic flux density and field gradients, sketching diagrams on napkins in the cafeteria. She wasn't just the liar or the foreigner anymore, she was the girl who understood the humming sphere, the girl who had won. Small, almost imperceptible signs of cultural curiosity began to bloom. A couple of girls started wearing small pins with the Korean taegyuk symbol, probably ordered online, Lina guessed, but the gesture felt significant. Someone asked her how to say "thank you" in Korean, 감사합니다, struggling adorably with the pronunciation. Questions about kimchi: is it really spicy? K-dramas: have you seen Crash Landing on You? And the proper technique for using chopsticks replaced the earlier, cruder inquiries. It wasn't deep cultural exchange yet, but it was a start. A bridge being tentatively built, one curious question at a time. The most astonishing transformation, however, was Amanda's. The girl whose sneering comments had cut the deepest seemed to undergo a slow, almost reluctant metamorphosis. For a few days, she just watched Lina from across the cafeteria, her expression guarded. Then, one lunchtime, she slid onto the bench opposite Lina, unwrapping her own sandwich with unnecessary force. Silence stretched between them, punctuated only by the cafeteria din. Finally, Amanda cleared her throat. "So," she said, not quite meeting Lina's eyes. That electromagnetic thing. Is that, like, how real spaceships will work soon? Lina, cautious, explained the concept of ion propulsion and how electromagnetic acceleration was a promising area for future development, particularly for long-duration missions where fuel efficiency was critical. Amanda listened, asking surprisingly intelligent follow-up questions. The next day, she sat with Lina again. And the day after. The conversations gradually shifted from science to tentative questions about Korea, about Lina's life before Northwood. Okay, seriously, Amanda said one day, pushing her salad around her plate. How do you say hello properly? I tried looking it up, but... Lina smiled, a genuine smile this time. Annyeonghaseyo, she pronounced slowly. That ding sound is soft, in the back of your throat. Amanda tried, mangling the syllables. Annyeonghaseyo. Almost, Lina laughed. Try again. An unlikely friendship began to sprout in the noisy cafeteria, fragile but persistent, nurtured by shared lunches and awkward attempts at cross-cultural communication. It wasn't just Amanda, either. Inspired perhaps by her change of heart, or simply by Lina's quiet expertise, a small group of students approached her one afternoon. Lina, a shy sophomore named Chloe began, we were wondering, you know so much about space and stuff. Would you, maybe be willing to, tell us more? Maybe start a club? Lina hesitated. The memory of Mr. Harrison's cynical comment about foreign families showing off echoed unpleasantly. But looking at their eager, curious faces, she felt a different impulse rise, the joy of sharing something she loved. Okay, she agreed. Maybe just an informal thing. During lunch. And so, the Cosmos and Culture Club was born. Twice a week, Lina met with a growing group in a quiet corner of the library. She shared printouts of stunning images from the Webb telescope, explained the life cycle of stars using simple diagrams, talked about KSIA's plans for robotic moon explorers, and even taught them how to write their names in the elegant phonetic script of Hangul. Seeing their eyes light up with understanding, sharing the sense of wonder her own parents had instilled in her, it felt like healing. Mr. Harrison, too, seemed to be undergoing his own quiet recalibration. Lina's grades became fair. Not overly generous, but objective. The red ink still appeared, but now it pointed out genuine errors or offered constructive suggestions, devoid of the earlier biting sarcasm. Then came the moment in physics class. During a discussion about orbital mechanics, Mr. Harrison paused. He looked directly at Lina. Lina, he said, his voice neutral, but the act itself felt monumental. Given your familiarity with KSIA's work, perhaps you could offer some insights into Korea's approach to developing lunar trajectory calculations. It was a small opening, a tiny crack in the wall of his Prejudice, but it felt enormous. Lina answered, carefully explaining the specific software modeling techniques her mother's team sometimes employed. He listened, nodded, and thanked her. Just that. But it was a start. A few days later, she found a used paperback copy of Carl Sagan's Cosmos tucked inside her locker, alongside a slim volume titled Pioneering Women in Aerospace. No note. But Lina had a strong suspicion who had left them there. The true thaw, however, came unexpectedly, about 2 weeks before Lina and her mother were scheduled to return to Seoul. As Lina was packing her bag after the final bell, Mr. Harrison appeared at the classroom door. Lina. Do you have a moment? Her stomach tightened instantly. Old anxieties resurfaced. What now? Had she made some new, unintentional error? She followed him numbly back into the now empty classroom. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, dust motes dancing in the beams. Mr. Harrison didn't stand behind his imposing desk. Instead, he leaned against the front edge of it, looking smaller. Tired. Almost vulnerable. Lina, he began, his voice low, avoiding her eyes initially. Well. This isn't easy. But I owe you an apology. A sincere one. He finally looked up, and Lina saw genuine regret in his gaze. My behavior towards you, particularly after your mother's lecture, it was unprofessional. It was unfair. It was wrong. Lina stood frozen, unsure how to react. This was the last thing she'd expected. I let personal feelings cloud my judgment, he continued, his voice strained. I made assumptions based on prejudice, not fact. I underestimated you, and I deeply underestimated your mother. He hesitated, then walked over to his desk drawer and pulled out a faded, yellowed newspaper clipping. He unfolded it carefully and laid it on the desk. It was an article about NASA budget cuts from years ago, accompanied by a photo of a younger man with kind eyes, standing beside a rocket model. My late husband, David, Mr. Harrison said quietly. He was an aerospace engineer at NASA. Brilliant man. Poured his heart into the Constellation program. His voice grew thick with old pain. When they canceled it, budget cuts, international partners pulling back, he lost his job. Lost his purpose, really. He was never the same. He looked back at Lina, his expression etched with self-awareness. I held on to a lot of bitterness about that. About foreign competition, about shifting priorities. I saw your mother's success, KSIA's achievements, and I reacted badly. I projected my own disappointments onto you. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. But, he sighed, perhaps it explains, though it certainly doesn't excuse, my behavior. Lina looked from the photo of the smiling man to Mr. Harrison's pained face. Empathy, unexpected and profound, softened the lingering hurt within her. She thought of her own Appa's dreams, cut short. She thought of her Halmiani's wisdom. There is a proverb in Korea, Lina said softly, her voice barely a whisper. It says, there am ape dumble, like a candle in the wind. Sometimes, grief makes us unsteady. She paused, then added, thinking of the lecture's aftermath, but my grandmother also says, Gatun namuji mianjio jikinda. The straightest tree is the first to be chopped down, but maybe true strength isn't about never bending. Maybe it's about having the courage to adjust. To change. A faint, sad smile touched Mr. Harrison's lips. More wisdom from your grandmother. Lina nodded. A comfortable silence settled between them, heavy but not awkward. The late afternoon sun filled the room with a warm, forgiving light. For the first time, Lina felt something akin to peace within these school walls. So, Mr. Harrison said, shifting back to a more professional tone, though the warmth remained in his eyes. Preparations for the state science fair. How are they progressing? They're going well, Lina answered. But I'm having a little trouble sourcing a specific type of high-Gauss neodymium magnet for a potential upgrade. To her surprise, Mr. Harrison listened intently, then offered several practical suggestions, even providing the name of a specialized supplier he knew from his husband's old contacts. His 30 years of teaching experience, previously used as a shield, now became a tool offered in support. As their conversation wound down, he placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Lina, before you and your mother head back to Seoul, I was wondering, how would you feel about giving one final presentation to the science classes? Together? About KSI, your project, sort of a celebration of science without borders. Lina's eyes widened. This wasn't just an apology, it was an act of restitution. A bridge being built. Yes, she breathed, a wide, genuine smile finally breaking through. Yes, Mr. Harrison. I'd like that very much. The path forward suddenly felt clearer, paved not with defensiveness, but with the exciting prospect of sharing knowledge, a task that now felt like a privilege, not a burden. That sense of peace, fragile yet persistent, carried Lina Kim through her final 2 weeks at Northwood High. The joint presentation with her mother, suggested by Mr. Harrison in that moment of truce, evolved into something warmer, more collaborative, a farewell stargazing party hosted on the school's sprawling athletic field. As dusk settled on their last Friday night, the field transformed. Strings of fairy lights twinkled between borrowed university telescopes, casting a soft glow on clusters of blankets where families, students, and teachers gathered. The air smelled faintly of cut grass, popcorn from a machine near the entrance, and mysteriously, the subtle savory scent of japchae noodles Dr. Park had insisted on bringing in large containers. It felt miles away from the tense, sterile atmosphere of Lina's first few weeks. It felt like community. Lina and her mother moved easily among the crowd, guiding novices to eyepieces, their shared passion a visible bond. "Okay, look just above that bright star, Arcturus," Lina instructed a group of wide-eyed freshmen clustered around a Dobsonian telescope. "See that fuzzy patch? That's the Hercules globular cluster, hundreds of thousands of stars packed together." "Whoa," someone breathed in the darkness. Nearby, Dr. Park patiently explained the phases of the moon to a group of parents, using simple hand gestures. Lina caught Mr. Harrison's eye across the field. He was helping a younger student adjust the focus on a smaller refractor telescope, a look of quiet concentration on his face. He offered Lina a small, genuine smile, and she smiled back. The bridge, it seemed, was holding. Amanda found Lina adjusting the finder scope on another telescope. "Hey," she said, holding out 2 paper cups. "Hot chocolate?" "Thanks, Amanda." Lina accepted the cup, the warmth seeping into her fingers. So, Amanda peered into the eyepiece Lina had just aligned. "What are we looking at here?" "That," Lina pointed towards the faint smudge visible even without magnification, "is the Andromeda Galaxy. 2.5 million light-years away. The closest major galaxy to our own Milky Way." Amanda was silent for a moment, gazing into the eyepiece. "Wow," she whispered finally, straightening up. "It makes all that drama back then seem kinda stupid, huh? Looking at something that old, that far away." Lina just nodded, sipping her hot chocolate. Some things didn't need words. Later, Principal Williams stepped onto a small, temporary platform near the center of the field, tapping a portable microphone. "Can I have everyone's attention for just a moment?" he called out, his voice warm. The low murmur of conversation subsided. "Tonight," he began, "is a wonderful example of what happens when we open ourselves up to new perspectives, new knowledge, and new friendships." He gestured towards Lina and Dr. Park. The visit from Dr. Evelyn Park and her remarkable daughter, Lina Kim, has been an unexpected gift to Northwood High. They haven't just shared scientific knowledge, they've reminded us that curiosity, innovation, and the pursuit of understanding truly have no borders. He paused, beaming. "And in that spirit, I'm thrilled to announce the launch of a new initiative, inspired directly by their time with us, the Northwood KSIA Science Exchange Program. Starting next year, thanks to initial funding secured with Dr. Park's assistance and a matching grant from the district, a ripple of surprised applause, we will be offering 2 scholarships annually for students from Northwood to visit the Korean Space Innovation Agency facilities near Taejeom, and for 2 Korean students to spend a semester studying science here with us." The announcement was met with enthusiastic applause and excited chatter. Lina felt her mother squeeze her hand, her eyes shining with pride. It was more than Lina could have hoped for, a tangible legacy, a bridge built not just of understanding, but of opportunity. As the applause died down, Mr. Harrison made his way over to Lina. He carried a long, slender box wrapped in simple blue paper. "Lina," he said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it before. "A small farewell gift. From me." Lina carefully unwrapped the package. Inside lay a beautiful, portable refracting telescope, compact and elegant. Attached to the tube was a small, engraved plaque. It read, "For Lina Kim, may you always reach for the stars, finding new discoveries without boundaries." Tears sprang to Lina's eyes, blurring the inscription. She looked up at Mr. Harrison, speechless. Then, forgetting propriety, forgetting the awkwardness, she stepped forward and gave him a quick, heartfelt hug. He seemed startled for a second, then returned the gesture, briefly, almost stiffly, but with undeniable sincerity. "Thank you," Lina whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You earned it," he replied gruffly, clearing his throat. "Now go show them Saturn." Before the evening ended, Principal Williams invited Lina to say a few words. Standing on the small platform, looking out at the sea of faces illuminated by starlight and the soft glow of the fairy lights, faces that were no longer strange or hostile, but familiar, friendly, she felt a profound sense of belonging. "When I first came here," she began, her voice steadier now, the microphone amplifying her quiet confidence, "I felt very far away. Like I was looking at a different sky." She gestured upwards. "But tonight, looking up with all of you, I don't see an American sky or a Korean sky. I just see our sky. The universe," she continued, finding her rhythm, "it doesn't see borders. It doesn't care about flags, or skin color, or where our grandparents were born. It only reveals its wonders to those who have the courage to look, the curiosity to ask questions, and the willingness to work together." She thought of her father's unfinished dreams, now taking flight in her own heart. She thought of her mother's resilience, her grandmother's wisdom. "It doesn't matter where we come from," she concluded, her voice ringing with quiet conviction. "When we look up at the same stars, we are all sharing the same sky. We are all connected." As warm applause washed over her, Lina looked up. High above, the familiar constellations wheeled across the velvety darkness, Orion striding, the Pleiades glittering like scattered diamonds. They were the same stars that shone over Seoul, the same ancient light that had guided travelers for millennia. They no longer felt distant or alien. They felt like home. Both homes. "Hello, stars," she whispered silently, a promise in her heart. "See you again soon." This wasn't an ending. It was just the beginning of a new trajectory, a journey under two skies, perhaps, but always aimed towards the same infinite, hopeful expanse.